looking back to why I applied to ISM, I realized that it was more of an impulsive and naive decision. How hard could it be? I can do anything, right? I can do everything. The same naive nature that every junior has going to senior year. But the opportunity to skip class whenever I wanted, the opportunity to get out of anything scratch-free because I could use ISM, made the offer all that much more enticing. But really, one quote perfectly summarizes what I expected going into ISM. And this is a quote from Winnie the Pooh. It says, "As soon as I saw you, I knew an adventure was going to happen." You being ISM, of course, but I knew ISM would be an adventure, but I didn't expect it to be a roller coaster ride. ISM stands for Independent Study and Mentorship, and is an application-based class that allows students to explore a chosen field in more depth. It doesn't really have to be a field that they want to pursue, just one that they're interested in and are willing to spend time to look into it more, research, talk with others about it, and really are passionate about that field. For most of us, it's the field we want to pursue. And for me, that's aerospace engineering. Before I start talking about ISM from day one, I want to give you sort of a background of who I am and why I chose aerospace engineering. I grew up with a fascination with planes. Whether it was the awe of flying through space, flying through air, above the birds, or was the thrill of knowing that somehow you're defying gravity while completely being under the rules of gravity, that kept me fascinated. And even as I grew older, this thrill never grew down. Even if I demystified the physics, the thrill behind it, there was still an awe attached to the fact that there was these giant metal things flying through the sky, taking me from point A to point B. Now, as the average child changes his career choice maybe 10 or 20 times, even more growing up, I held steadfast. Maybe not so steadfast as I started as a pilot, but a pilot really quickly morphed into aerospace engineering under the preface that I really liked science, I really liked math, and I didn't really want to adjust to this straining activities of being a pilot, not sleeping for entire days at a time, and being relied on to take hundreds of people a day safely from point A to point B was a daunting task, even though aerospace engineering is really the hard part behind it. Yet, I've always had this idea that I wanted to study aerospace engineering, just not which part. And that's really where ISM really came in. But seriously, why aerospace engineering? There's always something about not being able to quite understand something that makes you love it more, makes you want to have it more. The fact that you can't pick that rose makes you want to love that rose, have that rose so much more. And that's really where my fascination for airplanes really grew. The sort of lack of knowledge I had behind it made it even more interesting and more thrilling of an experience to ride one. And it's one of the most common forms of long distance transportation nowadays, and it's the fastest growing long distance transportation. Now, many will argue that either the internet or ships or sailing were the first step in truly globalizing the world. And while I do completely agree with this, I believe airplanes truly, truly globalized the world and made each part connected in a way that was impossible before. I can get from point A to point B in less than a day. Like I can get from point A to space in less than a day. And this is incredible. I can order something from China for 50 cents and get it to my house with free shipping in maybe a month. Now, a month might be a long time, but that's the price you pay for free shipping. And even though the science behind it, the connections, the globalization aspect of it, doesn't really have to do with aerospace engineering, it's one of the many reasons that has piqued my interest and has kept me going in aerospace engineering. The fact that maybe I could be a piece in this globalization effort, that I could help spark a new revolution, a faster one, a greater one, getting things from A to B much faster, much quicker, much safer, and overall just influencing people in a seemingly normal way, yet having a huge impact on them, was something that truly, truly made me interested. Now, another aspect is the thrill. The thrill of maybe some way being able to go from point A to point B in regards to space with the same ease from going here to Dallas or here to home someday. Now, this idea might seem so far-fetched that we can get from here to maybe on the moon in 20 minutes, yet it's not that far-fetched an idea if we continue to work at it, continue to work with it, and I believe that in my lifetime this might be possible. And that's what has got me there. So, what is aerospace engineering? And I want to start with the word aerospace engineering. It's a really weird word. If you break it down to aero and space, you get aero, which stands for atmosphere, Earth, or relating to the atmosphere, and space, which really means space. Now, if you put these two back together, you have a contradicting statement where you get atmospheric space, which have nothing to do with each other besides the fact that they exist next to each other. But even more and more now, this is truly what aerospace engineering is. Breaking the boundary between atmosphere and space, merging them so that they're one, embodying the term aerospace engineering into actually what aerospace engineers do. Put simply, aerospace engineering is a subfield of mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering is a huge, very broad field that encompasses all parts of different engineering, electrical, even computer engineering, into one engineering field within mechanical engineering, dealing with mechanical parts, where aerospace deals specifically with that air and space event. Now, why does aerospace engineering deserve its own field? Well, the applications of aerospace engineering and the work that aerospace engineers do is pretty broad itself. In fact, it's literally as big as space is. It's endless. The opportunities are endless. The reaches are endless. And it's the next step in exploring the unexplorable. So, aerospace engineering is split primarily into two different parts: aeronautical and astronautical. Aeronautical really pertains to the Earth's atmosphere. And the Earth's atmosphere is literally anything that's not in space and is affected by wind or the air. And this, most of the times, it's from the benefit of moving air. Oftentimes, it's against moving air in the case of missiles and cars. But this covers anything from cars, missiles, airplanes, wind turbines. All of these aerospace engineers have their own hands in. Even bikes nowadays, making bikes out of composites that are more aerodynamic, making them streamlined, more clothes that are much more aerodynamic, all have to do in some way with an aerospace engineer. Technically, every time you fly, you're in an aeronaut, because an aeronaut is someone who flies. This aspect of engineering is what got me into aerospace engineering. The thrill of the metal giants flying through the sky is what really got me into this field. But this next part is what kept me there. On the other end of the scale is astronautical engineering. And astronautical really deals with a much broader, much larger field of engineering, where it deals with rovers, satellites, spaceships, rockets, anything that has to deal with space. Oftentimes, even the merging of space and atmosphere. Now, this field really keeps me interested as I am sort of the Christopher Columbus of the next stage, and where I have the opportunity to go out and explore this endless world where truly we have an idea of what exists there, but we haven't seen it with our own eyes. And the opportunity to be able to, like I said, globalize the world faster, to make it multi-global, where we can have bases on Mars, here, Mercury, everywhere, just moon, merge this. We're, instead of just one planet, we're an alliance of planets working together, and we're truly, truly a better functioning system. In fact, that's an engineer's job, is to make things better. Now, there's a third section of aerospace engineering that really doesn't have a name yet. And this is the aerospace engineering field that I ultimately want to get into. This field doesn't have a name, but the new entrepreneurs, such as these entrepreneurs who are paving the way for this new field, such as Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, with their respective companies, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic. These companies are trying to merge the boundary, breaking the boundary between atmospheres and truly embodying what aerospace engineering is. So, what do we call this field that deals with both? Maybe aerospace? Who knows? But this is the field that I really want to get into. And I believe I was born in the perfect time. Maybe a little too late for the first revolution, with the space race, Soviet Union versus America. But maybe I was born at the perfect time to plug right in for the second revolution. By the time I graduate, several of these companies, NASA, SpaceX, will have already sent people to Mars. This is a huge thing, as this is the first step into the next revolution. I can help pave the way to get into different planets, different explorations, truly globalize the solar system in the way Christopher Columbus and then globalized the world. But this is a branch that I really want to explore, and the one that technically doesn't even exist yet. But this is going to revolutionize the way we travel, and many will ask why. And I shall have that answer for you in the presentation. Now, going back to day one of ISM, I realized the mess I got myself into. Physics C, ISM, Calc BC, all in the same day? What was I thinking? Within the first 6 weeks, I realized that this is going to be a tough year. But I was ready to take the ball at hand. Now, we started with research assessments. Research assessments are simply just looking up articles, looking through them, and really talking about how it relates to us, how it correlates to us, how it relates back to your field. It's a very specific part of your field and how it relates to it. And through this process at ISM, I realized huge things about aerospace engineering that really interest me and really what I want to get into. Now, the first one is involving quantum computing. Now, NASA owns one of the very few quantum computers that exist. As a quantum computer is very expensive, very hard to handle, as you constantly have to cool it and everything. But an engineer knows that a computer exists in two states, 0 or 1. And it's the combination of these two states that create a computer and how it runs code, how it runs everything, how it works. A computer is basically just 0 and 1s. What a quantum computer is 3 states, a qubit, a 0, 1, and in between. In between in the sense that it's 0 and 1 at the same time, which relates back to the quantum idea of superposition. Superposition is the idea that an object can exist in 2 different places at the same time. Not even 2, 3, 4, 5 different places at the same time. The idea that an object can go from one place to the next in a million different paths, and it takes these paths at the same time. How do we know this? The fact that we have experimental data that backs up this idea is crazy, as our brains assume so many things. Assume that when I walk out of this room, all of y'all will still be there. I will know it in my heart that you still are there because I haven't seen you guys leave. But how can I be 100% sure that you guys are still in that room? How can I be 100% sure that that table is in that same place, hasn't gone anywhere else, or isn't in another place at the same time? And I can't. And that's one of the great things about moving on future into quantum computing, is that we can do things that we haven't done better before. Better, faster, stronger. But a couple of ways NASA is using this is to explore different exoplanets. Different planets that we might be able to explore. We might be able to inhabit in the rare case that something does happen to Earth. At the current rate, which is highly possible. But even with meteorology taking huge amounts of data and compiling it, and doing work that would normally take millions of years in days, is incredible. And the second thing I realized from this is how we can globalize aerospace engineering. For the past 60 years or so, aerospace engineering and aerospace work has really been much of the work of America and the Soviet Union, at least in regards to space. Recently, China, the European Space Agency, and even India have taken huge, huge leaps into the future of their programs. India, recently one of my research assessments was on this, the Mars orbital mission, in which they sent a satellite to space at $73 million. $73 million. In comparison, that same year, the movie Gravity cost $100 million to create. In that same year, NASA launched the satellite to Mars for $250,000. The fact that India was able to do it with only $73 million and get something to Mars, even if it was rudimentary, even if it was very basic, very simple, the fact that they were even able to do it at the same time we are is amazing. Even China, India, Europe, all planning to send people to the moon by the end of the 2020, by the end of this decade. This is insane to assume, or insane to think about. As even though we did it 60 years ago, they're doing it now, and they're catching up to us even faster, even quicker than before. What took us 20 years to do, they're doing in 10 years. What took us 50 years, they're doing in 5 years. It's insane how times have changed. One of the biggest things that I advocate is that we're in this together as a world. If we're going to explore the unknown, we might as well do it together. So this globalization of aerospace engineering has really got me interested, and this is one of the things I really want to explore after I graduate. Now, abruptly moving on to my interviews, I realized that during this time of during research, we were also conducting interviews with people in our pertinent fields or nearby fields. Now, 3 of these really stuck out. 2 in the field that I'm not even interested in the field of fluid dynamics. And the third with thermal. Now, the first 2 I'm going to talk about have to do with fluid dynamics. It's not even regarding my field, but it does have some implications in my field. So, I met with Dr. Choi and Dr. Anderson at the University of Texas at Dallas. And just the reason I remember these 2 interviews is how different yet similar they were. They were talking about the same field, the same exact thing, except how they had done it differently. Dr. Anderson looked at more simulational data, more computers sending huge amounts of data to UT, get it back, and just visualizing it. Dr. Choi, on the other hand, actually had a lab, performed experiments there, and from there wrote reports. Now, this comparison of both is really interesting to see how within one field there's so many different paths you can take. The same way that you can do astronautical and aeronautical, the same way that I can even further break down aeronautical to theoretical and experimental, or astronautical. Now, my interview with Dr. Mullins further solidified this assumption that both are very distinct fields, distinct separations. But Dr. Mullins completely changed that idea. Now, Dr. Mullins is a professor at the University of Texas at Arlington, and he teaches fluid dynamics, fluid mechanics, and the introduction courses for juniors and then into more math-based, math lab, and those kind of courses. And now, while on my first interview, we talked about how he had done research in both experimental and theoretical, whereas he had written code that simulated the crash that he was analyzing, as well as he actually went out and performed actual results on the effects of icing on a plane. Now, he told me about this, where he was looking at a plane as a plane has defrosters on its self, so that the ice doesn't hit it, ice doesn't affect the plane too much. So he would have a plane fly in front of him that was shooting out yellow dye at his plane, so he could see where ice was forming around his plane. And he used this data to look at how it corresponded to his simulational data of the crash and how it affected it. Now, throughout this whole time, what he's telling me his experiences is the work he had done, the past 45 years of research, working at 4 or 5 different companies, teaching. He was so enthusiastic about everything he had done, and it seemed as if he had not regretted a single day, despite the fact that he told me he did. Now, this is the sort of engineer I want to be. One that, even after 45 years of work, still enjoyed and still had the same passion he did 45 years ago, graduating out of school for the field. Now, later on, I do choose him as my mentor, but I'll explain that in a bit. Over the course, as we were nearing our interviews, the end of our interview process, we began our original. Now, our original work was more of a sort of culmination of the research we had done. And it's not, in a sense, original work you say, this is completely my work. It's sort of a work that adds to the field that you're contributing, but adds to your understanding of that field. So, for this, I chose to make airfoils, reinvent them, understand how they work, understand all about airfoils, what they are, what they do, and then test them in a wind tunnel that I attempted to make. But before I begin with my original work, I want to explain sort of my quote and sort of an origin story. Now, NASA was not always NASA. NASA was NASA before it was NASA, as there wasn't really space before in the 1940s. So, after the first flights at Kitty Hawk, the Orville brothers, America founded NACA. And while NACA might not have had a big role in aerospace in the NASA legacy that NASA has left, it had a huge role in categorizing every single airfoil there is with a 4-digit, 5-digit, or 6-digit code, each explaining what the airfoil is. Now, an airfoil is a cross-section of the wing. So if this is an airfoil, there will be a wing that extends upon this, like this will be the end, and this would attach to the plane. And you can use like little airfoils like this to look at how they interact with wind and see how they interact in real life. Now, this sort of origin story of NASA before it was NASA, the fact that NASA built upon a pre-existing organization leads me to my quote. Quote, "If you wish to bake an apple pie from scratch, you must first weigh the leaves." By Carl Sagan. Now, what does this quote mean? Honestly, I don't have a clue. I don't know what it meant. But the way I interpret it is that we are always building upon the past. There's no such thing as original. Someone has always had that idea before you. They've just failed at it or never actually went and executed it. NASA was NASA before it was made. Recently, gravitational waves were actually recorded, actually researched, and actually justified 100 years after Einstein actually said that, oh, these exist, we just haven't been able to. The fact that our research now is building upon 100 years ago work is insane. The same way that my work is building upon what I've done in 60 years, what I'll do in 20 years will be building upon the past 20 years of their work. And this continual progression is what an engineer is doing, building upon the past to make the future present better. Present better. And truly, this quote embodies aerospace engineering in one quote.